You look at what has happened in Russia, and Vladimir Putin has this goal of becoming the fifth biggest economy in the world, and yet the growth rate is still slower than the global average. What are the structural reforms that he needs to do to get it up, to make Russia the fifth biggest economy in the world?
We need to carry out structural reforms that will increase the total productivity of all economic inputs, including labor productivity. This means that we need to create favorable conditions for private investments, the taxation has to become more predictable, compliance with the rules of the game should be improved, and regulatory barriers should be lowered. We need to encourage innovations and competition so that the strongest businesses could prevail. The range of reforms is quite broad, and the government is currently preparing to undertake appropriate measures. However, the tasks that have been set are quite ambitious and require decisive actions. The central bank is not just a monetary authority. We are a mega regulator and are responsible for the development of the financial sector. To increase its competitiveness, we need to carry out structural reforms so that the financial sector could provide the resources required for economic growth. This is our task, and we know what needs to be done to achieve it.
We should come back to the financial sector in a second, but just one very obvious question is it looks as if it is impossible for Russia to become the fifth biggest economy by 2024. Have you explained to Vladimir Putin that it is an unrealistic goal?
This is a very ambitious goal that requires decisive actions, but it is possible. There were times when our economy was growing at a rate of 7% per year, for example, in the early 2000s. Of course, at that time, the growth was largely based on a prolonged period of growing oil prices. Today, the growth should be ensured by other factors. Russia's economy has the necessary potential for growth. We are capable of improving labor productivity in spite of the demographic problems we are faced with. The population of Russia is well educated. We have vast natural resources. Major market institutions are working well. The same applies to the financial infrastructure. We have a rather big domestic market. All the preconditions are in place. We just need to tap this potential. This is an ambitious but realistic goal.
Is there one particular reform that would make the biggest difference? One structural reform that you want more than the others?
There is no single reform that would lead to immediate results. Reforms should be implemented simultaneously in a number of fields. We need to increase labor mobility. We need to lower administrative barriers and simplify permit-based procedures for businesses. We need to promote competition and create a level playing field in all sectors. It would be great to undertake one spectacular reform that would lead to impressive results, but this would not be fair. We need to move forward consistently and in a number of areas.
In terms of one sign of success for Russia is the ruble has been very strong, and you are the only currency to have risen against the dollar in some baskets. And I wonder, does that make an interest rate cut more likely in June?
When we decide on the key policy rate, we will consider a variety of factors, both internal and external. However, the ruble exchange has become much less volatile, despite the fact that it is free-floating. Of course, we saw a spike in the exchange rate and a number of other indicators after the introduction of the sanctions in April. However, within a short period of time, the markets regained stability, largely thanks to a conservative macroeconomic policy, floating exchange rate, and the introduction of a budget rule decreasing the dependence of the exchange rate on the volatility of oil prices.
All around this conference, we are surrounded by people who have been hurt by sanctions. how big an impact do you think that has had on the Russian economy? What is the impact of the sanctions?
Конечно, российская экономика является частью мировой экономики.
Russia's economy is part of the global economy. Foreign trade accounts for a substantial share of the GDP. Therefore, the sanctions that restrict access to financial markets have a certain impact on the economy and the financial sphere. However, this impact is quite limited, and the sensitivity of our economy and the financial sector to external shocks, and this includes sanctions, has diminished. The foreign exchange rate is less dependent on oil prices. We do see that the economy has become more resilient. The impact of the sanctions is hard to quantify. It will be long-term, but it is quite limited.